So I think the best way for me to start is by telling you a story, I'm thinking, right? So a story that's actually been very important to me. It's one of my favorite stories from an old epic poem called the Ramayana. It's an epic poem of India. So here it is. So the Vanaras were a shape-shifting people. They had the powerful qualities of monkeys and bears. And they were on a mission to find a princess who had been kidnapped. And they had just discovered that she was held captive on an island across the sea. So they were overjoyed because they were looking for her for such a long time all over the world. And now that they found her, at least knew where she was, she seemed only a step away from rescue. So they rushed down to the shores, and with shouts of joy, they looked out across the sea and suddenly fell silent. Their hope turned to despair, because as they looked out across the ocean, they realized just how far they really had to go. Their leader gathered them together, offered a few encouraging words, and said, "How far can each of you jump?" And they all started answering the question. Hanuman, the greatest warrior of the Vanaras, sat way in the back, alone, quiet, and dejected. His uncle Jambavan saw him and went over and said, "Hanuman, what are you doing way back here, silent and dejected, all by yourself?" He said, "Don't you know who you are?" And he started reminding Hanuman who he was. He started telling Hanuman stories about himself and his family. He said, "Hanuman, when you were just a child, you saw the sun rising up in the sky, and you thought it was an apple, so you leaped up to go get it. That was many times more. You nearly plucked it right out of the sky. That was many times more the distance of this ocean." As Hanuman heard his uncle speaking about himself and his family and all the stories, he started to feel the strength returning to him. His muscles started to grow. He even got bigger, when his leg twitched as he remembered that first jump. He remembered. So he stood up, shook himself like a lion, and with a deep growl, prepared to cross the sea. So these stories, in myth in some cultures, it's either real or not real, or, true or not true. A friend of mine recently was reflecting on myth, and she was kind of recognizing something that, has been written about for a long time, which is that, myth actually, when we really think about what it means for us, these are things that are true that happen over and over and over again, aren't they? And in this story, the reason this story was so important to me was that it shows for me just how important it was, the role of family in remembering, the role of family in connecting with who we are and what we're about and what's important to us. Remembering, the first tool of thriving. Not just remembering who we are, but also what we want.